Welcome to Collapse Club, where we talk about how we are to live in a world that is collapsing. I'm David Baum. I'm in Seattle. Today I'm with Terry LePage, who is in Irvine, California. Hello, Terry.
Hi.
How did you, in your life, come to the point where you felt like you had to face the prospect of collapse directly? What happened that made you turn and face the issue?
Well, like a lot of us in the deep adaptation space, it was Jem Bendel's paper, and took me took me a long time of mulling it over to figure out what I might do. And what I ended up doing was, at least in the short term, was grief workshops, climate
What,
grief workshops.
why is that important? Uh, yeah,
I think um, for originally it was for activists, but more people are waking up that the extent of loss is just kind of unprecedented, and our culture is not very good at dealing with grief in general. But we there's just no place there was no place to deal with climate grief. People would try to fix you, dismiss you, etc. And when you deal with your grief, when you process it, you can both feel and function. If you don't deal with it and don't process, you have to pretend, you have to shut a part of yourself off, or you may even not function.
what is climate grief in particular? I've used the word, I know that I am sad about things that I see happening in the world, and I have a variety of feelings, but when it comes to grief, to be honest, I'm not sure I actually understand what it means to have climate grief in particular. What is that?
I'm not really a taxonomist of mental emotional states, but so traditionally we think of grief as what you feel when you lose someone you love, right? And climate grief is we're losing sustenance, we're losing a way of life, we're losing stories that we used to tell ourselves, we're losing species and habitats and places that we love. Just so many different levels. So all those things can have a lot of emotions attached to them. But I think underneath a lot of emotions, it often comes down to grief. So grief is both an emotion and a process.
Mm. And the process of dealing with, well, the process of grief, not, yeah, what does it, is it like sadness, more than sadness?
So the emotion is a particular what can be it's it's response to a loss. Let's say that.
Right,
and
that makes
and the
sense to me.
loss can be already happened, it can be anticipated,
Mm.
it can be acknowledged, it can be unacknowledged. It can affect you personally, or you can just be a witness, and you can grieve over all those different things. And the grieving process is the process of figuring out how are you going to live losing the thing you love, because your old way of living required that relationship.
Got it. How are you going to live without what you loved? And the process of bereavement, I guess, from the reading I've done, is to accept the loss and incorporate when someone dies, uh, or you lose a job or something, you grieve for it, you realize the loss has occurred, and then you incorporate the memory of that into your current life. So after a period of disarrangement and trouble, you make the adjustment or the adaptation and incorporate the memory of the beloved person or thing into your current life. Does that make sense?
Well, and your life is changed. You're not the same person you were before grieving, before before coming to terms with the loss. Accept might not be the best word. Coming to terms with somehow it's um,
Yeah, that's what I've noticed is the process of adapting to the losses, both real and anticipated, regarding climate change and the various aspects of collapse have really made me a new person. Um,
right.
a lot of I have lost a lot of myself that I used to recognize, and I have discovered or rediscovered parts of myself which have been absent or unknown. So it's a process of development as well as just sort of accepting what is gone, though there is that as well. So what do you do? I read your bio, very impressive. And can you tell us a little about the things that you do to face collapse in your life after you've turned to it? What do you do about it?
Well, it's a moving target. It's an ongoing process. Um, my go-to when I'm anxious and confused is data. So I read a lot, and I have a science background, so I could probably, sift through that easier than some people. But there's a lot that isn't known too. And then at some point I realize, well, I've learned all I need to know about this. It's not going to make it go away. And then I really felt this in terms of, so I am a Christian minister. We haven't mentioned that part. And so I think in terms of spiritual care. And so I I felt myself so affected by climate grief that I was becoming really annoying in the pulpit. I was crying, I was speaking about darker things than people wanted to hear about, and so forth. I have not sought a job in a church since reading Jim's paper.
Mm.
I finished up the one I was in about a year after that. And I'm a temp. I'm an interim, so this wasn't anything dramatic for me to leave a church. Um, where am I going with this?
Let me ask
So
you.
I wanted
Oh
to
no, go ahead.
serve.
Yeah,
I wanted to serve.
thank you.
That's what I do. And so I walked through my own grief and continue to walk through it because it's ongoing. It's not like it's done. The losses are done. They're just accelerating. Um, and then incorporating what I learned, then I created processes for other people to help metabolize their grief.
What do those look like?
Well, I started out with something that I called grief, gratitude, and courage. I had an in-person 2-hour workshop for all my activist friends who couldn't admit to each other just how horrified and scared they were by climate. And it was lovely. And then the pandemic hit, and I discovered DA, and I started doing grief, gratitude, and courage online. It's a lot of work. So I kind of streamlined it into a grief circle, which I'm doing monthly now. But I probably need to do a GGC sometime this spring. And I have a website if anybody's curious. Interestingly, I have a friend who took grief, gratitude, and courage template and applied it to uh, the grief experience by people of color over racial issues.
Well, that's interesting. So it sounds like it's as much about pos- positioning yourself, excuse me, positioning yourself in the world as it is about processing your feelings. You have to find a place, a way to be in the world, given what you now know, the new things you know, not all of which is good news.
Yeah, I think for me, because my work and my inner life are so closely connected, it's probably more true than for some people. I've also, so I've taken the work I do with immigrants in detention, and it kind of ratcheted up in terms of, yeah, this is climate justice work, right? Because immigration issues are going to become enormous and are already big. And I also took my native gardening and my volunteering for caring for a tiny preserve in my neighborhood, and a lot of other things, and just said, like, how can I be more connected to the earth? How can I live in such a way that if I live this way from the start, we wouldn't be in this mess? And I have not unplugged myself. I still have a big carbon footprint, although smaller than I did. Um, but I just am really trying to have a sense of friendship with and reverence for the natural world.
Before we get to the pictures that I think you're going to share with us, I want to ask a question. When you serve others, when you host the circles that you do in the context of grief or immigration or race, whatever it is, when you serve, how does that help you?
Mm. I feel like I've been so blessed, for lack of a better word, um, that it's I just find meaning in my life by being of service to others. And I want people to recognize that it doesn't have to be offering a workshop, that it can just be asking after your sick neighbors, or figuring out how to have a free cycle so people buy less. It can be little things. And I think part of our the state we're in now is, it's partly due to our grandiosity, and there's no shame in thinking small.
Well, speaking of small, simple things you can do, I think you have some pictures of your garden that you want to show us that I want to see.
Well, a variety of things.
Oh, good.
Let me see if I can pull them up for you.
Oh, and by the way, in this moment, let me say hello to Wendy and to Kat, who joined us in the chat. Thank you very much for your comments. Nice to see you here. Thanks.
Hi, I'm not tracking that chat, but thanks for being here. Um, this is kind of a mandala of found objects from my garden that was done as part of the Deep Live gathering last fall. And we had an artist with this, so it was easy. And this process is based on a grief, an embodied grief process called Radical Joy, oddly enough, by Trebby Johnson, and I recommend it. Anyways, we had fun. We had a deep live gathering of 3 people in my
Mm,
neighborhood. This is a picture of the Santa Cruz Boardwalk and the fires that happened about a
wow.
year and a half ago. And my mom's house is on the bottom left, but survived. The fire didn't come to Santa Cruz proper. This is just kind of context. And it's weird to me how, I mean, people put California in the epicenter of collapse, and it's true, and still everyone pretends things are normal. It's quite remarkable. This is what I do in my online workshops. This is what we have as the center of our circle. Just thought that would be fun to show. And this is my beloved preserve in the winter when it's dry via Google Maps. It's quite tiny. and it's wedged in between a housing development and an industrial park. And when you're in it, and the buckwheat is in bloom, it looks like this.
Wow. That's
And
a nice piece of land.
it is, and it's quite ecologically diverse and quite fragile, as you can imagine. And we call ourselves the preserve preservers. And I was very tickled to find out that the very weed that we've been working so hard to eradicate for the past few weeks is a treasured native in Wendy's part of the world.
Oh, wow.
Then here's a couple pictures of my own garden. Um, the tall bushy tree thing is toyon. The red berries are that plant is what Hollywood is named after because
Mm,
the leaves are sharp like holly and the berries are red like holly.
mm.
And the little red flowers attract hummingbirds all year long. That's a plant from Baja California. And a whole bunch of sages and sagebrush and bay. Then I want to show you a few of my favorite things, my
Hmm.
friends in the natural world. This is the Big Sur coastline, which is also quite in danger of collapse. Highway 1 has repeatedly dropped into the ocean and been closed for up to months at a time, and there's basically no other way of getting there. These are some friends on the toyon berries, cedar waxwings, pictures from my friend Sandrine. These are California redwoods near where my mom lives, and my father and my sister's ashes are among the redwoods. So this is my outdoor cathedral. Just a beloved native plant that nobody can figure out how to grow because when you water it, it dies. So ironic. We can't grow native plants; they always die. And
Wow.
then when the time comes, and it may not be very long, when no one is allowed to do yard irrigation, only the natives will live. And
There's a lesson in there somewhere.
you think? Um, then when we're in the preserve, it's such a gift to see the little treasures. And this is one of the littlest treasures. I think that's my first finger by measurement. So those are
Wow.
tiny euphorbia flowers. And here's another couple of treasures in the preserve. Uh, a native flower that I believe it's an Allen's hummingbird. That's also a picture from my friend Sandrine. And then these are some of my other loves, my husband
Oh,
and my son, Scott and Mark.
sweet.
At a brew pub, which we used to do before Omicron hit. And that's the end.
Thank, thank you for that. So explain it to someone who is not a gardener. Uh, why is it important to do that kind of work?
So for me, I because of Earth Listening, because of Emma Mary Gathergood, I have gotten so many lessons from my garden. I mean, I think I could write a book about it. But a big part of it is just the give and take, the relationship. Like you can do anything you like to a dahlia and it's going to shrivel up in the summer. Doesn't matter if you can water it and kill it or you can just let it shrivel up in the summer. And then
Mm-hmm.
in the first rain in the fall, plump it goes. So there are limits to my control of my garden.
Mm.
And so I can shape and I can partner and I don't control. So I'll just start listing off lessons and you tell me when you're tired of it.
Okay.
So native California gardens go to sleep in the summer. Even the plants that stay green aren't actually doing much. They just don't shed their leaves. And many plants shed their leaves and look like they're dead, which is another reason that people think they can't grow a native garden because they think the plant died and they take it out and it was only dormant. But of course, it's not acceptable for a plant to go dormant in the summer, right? They're allowed to do that in the winter, but not in the summer. But of
Okay.
course, that's when they should go dormant in California because there's no water.
Okay.
So the lesson there is, unlike Disneyland, which is just up the street from me, um, you don't have to look good 24/7, 364. It is appropriate for you to go dormant when circumstances are dire. And um, at the
Whoa.
right time, when you need to.
Say that again.
It is appropriate for you to go dormant when the circumstances are dire. And I had that confirmed by a Russian in the Deep Life gathering. The woman with the traditional knowledge, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting her name, in the village, the eco village, she said, "Winter, it's the time to do nothing. It's the time to rest."
Well, that has application, I think, doesn't it? In looking at the our large situation, if things are dire, we may reach the end of our capacity to act, adapt, do things. And then what I'm hearing you say is it's appropriate to sort of shrivel, contract, bring the vital energies close and wait for a congenial season.
Yes. And of course, that is unacceptable in capitalism to go dormant because you have to be making money all the time. And it's unacceptable to the Protestant work ethic. And don't ask me to explain that one.
Okay. More lessons?
More lessons from the garden. Um, so, things that are beautiful all the time are actually beautiful for a season, then they throw them away and buy new ones. They're disposable.
Mm.
So in my neighborhood, there are these little areas close to the street where they always have plants in full flower. And the reason they always have plants in full flower is because they pull them up 4 times a year and put in new ones. So if you think you need to be in full flower all the time, it's not possible. They'll just throw you out and get a new you. So it's kind of the same lesson again.
So it sounds like that's a lesson about being very close in touch with what is really going on around you and letting your own existence be part of the larger stream.
Not expecting to, giving yourself off time, fallow time, research time, time to attend to the hidden things, the roots. That's what I hear out of that. And to not fall for that lie that you have to be on all the time, because I see that same disposable thing happening to my son's friends who took jobs at Google and Facebook and Microsoft. You're there for a season, you work your butt off, and then they kick you out and get somebody fresh out of school again.
Tending to the roots. I like that idea. What do you think of the situation that we're in now worldwide? You're obviously very well informed. When you look out, where are we going? What's our prospect? What should we be doing now? What does the world gardener say about the way to live now?
I think learning lessons from gardening is always valuable, whether or not your garden survives. Um, Another lesson, plant seeds. And I love the volunteers that come in my garden, the seeds that sprout that I didn't plant. They know just where they want to grow, they know which ones grow. Some plants volunteer all the time, some don't. Um, they don't need to live forever. Some live for a season, some live for a couple of years. Some popped up in the wrong place and want to be a tree but never will. So I have, I mean, I can make some guesses about what's coming. Refugees, um, shortages are going to be labeled inflation for a while. The monetary system is already so warped, no one understands it. I think it's very fragile, but I have no idea how that's going to unfold. You know the state of political system in the U.S. It's in a very scary place.
Yeah. Given
Um,
that, how should we tend our personal garden in the days to come?
well, I'm not sure I have a prescription for everyone. I think relationship building, and one thing about I know that it's wonderful for people who are collapse aware to come to the DA space and get those relationships with people who really understand what that's about. I think it's also important to have relationships with your next door neighbors, even if they're in a different political party and they're almost certainly not collapse aware. I have no, I don't have the means and I'm too old, and my husband doesn't want to go to some eco village or have a homestead or whatever. And I don't think that's going to fix anything for me or for the planet. You know, that's a great thing for a young person to try if they have the wherewithal. Um, we need to take care of each other, and we don't have to be simpatico in all things to take care of each other. Kindness goes a long way.
Kindness goes a long way. I'll accept that. Thank you. You have made an offering to our viewers. It's a Spotify playlist. The link is in the video description below this video. You want to tell us what that's about?
Well, I think it's got something for every mood in DA, some very dark ones.
DA, say what DA is for
Sorry,
people who don't know. No problem.
deep adaptation to climate collapse. Um, some of them are tearjerkers, some of them are dance tunes, a lot of them are uh, almost a cappella because I think I like that style. Anyways, I hope you have fun with it.
That's great. Thank you, Terry. I really appreciate your coming on and supporting me in this project. It's obviously still a learning experience for me. I really appreciate what you say about making relationships, understanding your environment, being appropriate to what's going on around you. Those are lessons that I think I could benefit from learning.
Thank you for having me, David. It was a pleasure.
All right. And I will fix that audio problem. I apologize to you and I apologize to the audience for that screeching horror at the beginning. That will be edited out. Takes about a day for the edit to happen, but I'll do that. Thank you everyone for joining us, and see you next time.